Hi, everyone. I'm Victor Beitner here with uh, George and Griffin from Cynet. We still have people jumping on, so we're going to give it another 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll start the session. And while we're waiting, that extra minute, if you have any questions, you can post them now. You could start with questions, and then we'll answer them shortly after. Okay, just a few more seconds. Okay. It's okay. It seems to have simmered down. All right. So, hi, this is Victor Beitner from Cybersecurity Canada. As people may know, we are a security and compliance company. One of our tools that we've been using for the past 9 years, I think, has been the Cynet product. We were early on with them testing some of their deployments, and it worked early on, so we decided to stick with it. We have here Griffin Aldrich, who's from Cynet, who will be answering questions, and George Tubin will be giving the presentation until we get to the last few slides where I'll be jumping in. So, George, you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for coming today. Very excited to be, sharing some thoughts and direction that we're taking here, between Cybersecurity Canada and Cynet, and then answer any questions that you may have. So the way I thought of starting this was to share a little bit about how we kind of see the cybersecurity space. And as a small, medium-sized enterprise, what types of tools do you really need to have in place to protect your organization? Now that the cybersecurity market has been around for 25, 30 years, we've seen a lot happen. Things have matured quite a bit, but we still have a lot of legacy stuff in place. And cybersecurity is this strange business where we keep adding new things and new capabilities, and we don't take a lot away. So it tends to make cybersecurity very complex and oftentimes extremely expensive. But we have a way to get around that, and let's kind of walk through all that. So if you think about how cybersecurity has developed over time, and what type of threats we've had, and what type of tools are in place, early on, we really started with protecting the endpoints and the networks. We thought, that was really the key place that we had to protect against things like malware and, viruses and spoofing and man-in-the-middle attacks. So, the industry developed a whole bunch of really good tools, like endpoint detection and response tools, which is really kind of the core of a cybersecurity technology stack. There's vulnerability management on the endpoint, risk management. And on the network side, we have network detection and response, DNS filtering, and other things. And that kind of represents the core of a very good kind of cybersecurity tool stack. Kind of the minimum needed. But now with the rise in email, and we've seen, since actually the beginning of kind of cybersecurity, which kind of started with phishing attempts, the need to have some type of email security as well, because everybody's interacting all the time through email, and the cyber criminals have developed some incredibly sophisticated capabilities to take advantage of folks' email. So, there's a lot of email filtering and email security tools that were developed that still need to be in place. And now that the enterprise has expanded into things like mobile devices, we're using a lot more SaaS and cloud apps. We really have to consider what we need to protect those areas. And you look at things like SaaS, and think in your own organization how many SaaS applications you run or different cloud capabilities. You have to make sure that all of those apps are configured properly all the time, and things don't change, or users don't leave the company and you forget to take them off, or you give the wrong privileges to the wrong users. So you'll always have to make sure that those things are configured properly, and it's the responsibility of the company for that configuration. The SaaS cloud provider do provide a lot of security on the back end, but it's still your responsibility to make sure that everything's configured the right way, so that you don't open up risks to your organization. And we know everybody has a mobile device these days, and we allow almost, I think, more than half now of all access to corporate assets are through mobile devices. And some companies have mobile device management to really help control the devices, but having mobile threat protection is also very important, as we're seeing a continued rise in mobile threats and mobile phishing and mobile malware, that be in there as well. And of course, user protection, having a good multi-factor authentication capability, as well as identity protection, user behavior analytics, are all important things to kind of round out, the type of technologies that we need to have in place to make sure that we don't have a threat either getting into the organization or moving around the organization. Now, because we have so much, kind of stuff coming in, and we have things like, firewalls and other types of capabilities within the organization, doing so, having a log management capability becomes very important to see what's been happening across different systems within the organization. So collecting those logs is a great way to help identify any potential threats within the organization, or if you suspect a threat, to be able to do some forensic analysis to understand what the nature is of that threat when you're doing the analysis. And because now we have so many different capabilities and so many different technologies to manage, having some form of automation and orchestration has also become very important, so that, as all these alerts come in, we're not spending all our time chasing after kind of simple things, but we're allowing automation to step in and help us, especially with a lot of repetitive manual tasks. But automation can also help with much more complex tasks, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the other important thing that every organization needs is 24/7 monitoring. Cyber criminals know, and they always launch attacks, 2 in the morning on a Wednesday or over holiday weekends. And, you want to be on top of those things right away. You don't want to get hit with ransomware and on, Saturday at 2 a.m. and then take care of it on Monday, because that's just too late. So while we do put a lot of technology in place, it's also important to have that human oversight, somebody always monitoring and watching what's going on. So, we look at this, and if, this is roughly what we'd want to have in place to protect our organization, it means we're going to have a lot of different tools, and we're going to have to talk to a lot of different vendors, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to go out and figure out the tools we need, the vendors we want to use, get them implemented, get these integrated to some level. And then anytime one of the vendors makes a change, we have to update that technology. We have to make sure that all the integrations are working properly. And it's a lot of work to maintain these systems. And then when something does happen and you're trying to track down a threat, you're jumping from screen to screen to screen. If you kind of have all these, discrete offerings, these discrete products in place, it makes it, quite challenging to manage, especially if you have a small cybersecurity team within your organization. And speaking of people, we know that most small, medium-sized enterprises really can't afford the size staff that's necessary to operate the cybersecurity technology, or even to offer 24/7 monitoring. To do that, you need 6 or 7 people to cover holidays, weekends, vacations, things around the clock. And it just becomes kind of unobtainable for most organizations. So, we mentioned the expense of this, the people expense, the technology expense, the maintenance expense. And what essentially has happened is cybersecurity, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises, is kind of broken. There's really no viable way for a small, medium-sized enterprise to get all the necessary protections that are needed to protect against today's threats. So what typically happens is a small, medium-sized enterprise will go out and get 2, 3, 4 of these technologies, try to operate them as best they could, but they're opening up a lot of holes within the organization. Or even worse, they go out and buy some of these very expensive technologies, and then they're grossly underutilized, because a lot of these technologies are built for very large global enterprises, and they have very detailed configuration capability, a lot of customization capability, and it becomes kind of overkill for what a small and medium-sized enterprise needs. So, you end up with a situation where you have, too many product silos, too many vendors, too complex, and it just becomes impossible to operate if you try to do this. And then, we've just shown kind of where we are up till now, but what happens tomorrow? What are some of the new technologies coming out and new capabilities? There always seems to be something new and some new capability coming out. So, if several years ago, if I presented this, I wouldn't have had some of these areas in this chart, but they've become very important today. And other things will become more important tomorrow. So how do we rationalize this? How do we make sense of this? How do we put something in place that's actually workable? And what we've done at Cynet is we've looked at all those technologies that are needed, and rather than creating a bunch of different products that you buy off the shelf, we've actually included all of those capabilities in one product. So the one product with one UI, one SKU, one capability has these things in place. And I won't read all these, but if you look on the, those didn't pop up. So, there's endpoint protection, network protection, everything you see here, everything is integrated, coordinated together. Everything works out of the box. Nothing, you don't have to worry about integrating different vendor products. All the capabilities are native to the platform. And then on top of it, there's centralized log management to pull in those logs, enable the organization to do threat hunting, to do forensic analysis by looking at these very important system logs. There's also extensive cybersecurity automation and orchestration, very SOAR-like, if you're familiar with security orchestration, automation, and response tools that are out there. Very similar capabilities is SOAR, where now you can actually automatically investigate and respond to threats using very sophisticated automation. And then on top of that, there's a 24/7 SOC. So there are folks that are available 24/7, monitoring the organization to make sure that no dangerous threats are overlooked, and also be there to answer any questions. If something peculiar happens at any time, you have some world-class experts sitting in the background just ready to answer questions for you. And here's the way, here's where it's populated. So if you look here, I won't read all these, but each of these capabilities that are in here are, a very robust capability. Just because we're putting a lot of different capabilities within the platform doesn't mean that they're not very powerful. Every single one of these can match up against, anyone in the market. But the real strength of this is that these things work together. So, rather than just looking at a signal from an endpoint and trying to figure out if something dangerous is happening, you could take that endpoint signal along with a network signal and maybe something the user's doing and combine those together to give you much more insight, much better context to be able to identify a threat that's happening and block that threat that you just can't do when each of those products are siloed. And you may see something on the endpoint and think, okay, well, that's nothing to worry about. But when you look at telemetry and information about that, maybe from the network or something happening with the user, it may indicate that something very dangerous is going on. So, having all of these things together gives you a very robust and much more powerful cybersecurity posture and cybersecurity capability. And when you look at this all in one, you could think of, you've probably heard of XDR, or extended detection and response. That's a tool to kind of pull together multiple discrete technologies. So you could think of all in one as kind of XDR, where everything is kind of built in. And, having these two things together becomes, very powerful because you get visibility across the environment. You could do that correlation that I just talked about to really understand context. In terms of remediation actions, you could remediate across the enterprise. It's not just, deleting a file on an endpoint, but you can do things like, disable the user in Active Directory, or shut down a network node, or do things like that need to be done in cases of certain attacks, and you could automate these responses. So one of the things I thought I'd show here is kind of this ransomware example, because and this kind of helps solidify kind of why this approach is very important. A lot of times when people talk about ransomware, they don't think about the attack lifecycle. They just look at kind of that right cell impact. And it becomes very dangerous to treat ransomware as just a malware problem. We're trying to prevent ransomware from getting on the endpoint and just thinking about it as malware, because the ransomware getting on the endpoint is typically just the final stages of an attack. And if you think about the entire attack and all the effort that an attacker goes through to get that malware onto the endpoint, it's multiple stages, and they go through a lot of trouble making sure that this is customized and undetectable, so that they can get malware on multiple endpoints to really cause disruption. But malware didn't arrive on that endpoint by accident. There's a long sequence of events, and if you kind of work backwards from impact, before it got to the endpoint, it was evading defenses. In this example, it used a legitimate Windows utility to kind of make it look like it was supposed to be there. And before that, there was some lateral movement going on within the organization. The organization used a Windows utility to move around the network and land on the target host and maybe multiple hosts within the organization, so that they can launch a coordinated ransomware attack. And before the lateral movement, they were doing discovery, where they were doing network reconnaissance and mapping out the environment and determining where they should be targeting to download the ransomware. And before that, there was an execution that took place where, in this case, a PowerShell was misused to run the attacker's commands and maintain a beachhead within the environment. And then before that, they kind of had to get initial access into the environment. And in this case, it was a phishing attack that carried a weaponized Excel file. So when we look at it this way, and we have visibility of ransomware across the entire attack lifecycle, we have a lot of opportunities to detect and disrupt that attack. And it leaves us in a much more powerful position. And when you look at it this way, you almost say, this is a long, noisy chain of events. How could you miss these? It's because you're not looking for them. So it becomes very important to have the tools that we talked about in place, to have visibility into endpoint, into network, into users. So you can see this full attack lifecycle and respond early on, so you never actually make it to the end stage. And of course, you have protections on the end stage, but the idea is to stop this in the tracks as early as you can. So with that, let's actually turn to a recent example. And I don't know if some of you have heard of Lockbit, but Lockbit is a well-known ransomware group. And in fact, just yesterday, I noticed there was a news story that Evolve Bank up in Maine in the US reported data from 7 million customers were stolen by the Lockbit group. So the Lockbit group has been around for a while, and they're essentially a ransomware as a service organization. And they have like 200 or so affiliates that help them deploy Lockbit ransomware at different target organizations. And then they share in whatever money that becomes extorted from that target organization. And in fact, the leader of the Lockbit organization was just unmasked by agencies in the US, UK, and Australia, and there's warrants out for him, but he's deep in Russia, so chances are he won't get apprehended. So you can look on here at some of the methodologies they use. Remote desktop protocol, also phishing campaigns is used, and you can see privilege escalation is something they do once they get in to a network. Encryption, and then data exfiltration. And if you look, as we discussed, the opportunities you have across the entire attack lifecycle, I won't read all these, but you could see at each of these stages the types of protections that Cynet has in place to help identify that an attack is actually happening and help block that attack from being able, to achieve its goal. And then, all the way down to identifying Lockbit specifically on endpoints, and then actually seeing if data is being exfiltrated fraudulently if somehow Lockbit becomes successful on the endpoint. And we never have it get to that stage because there are so many different opportunities to identify and block that Lockbit attack, as you can see on here. Another recent example we have is this NATO data leak that we've seen, where these hacktivists are using Stealer logs. And Stealer malware is actually becoming incredibly popular, where it's a type of malware that sits in a browser and steals credentials. So whether it's your work laptop or your personal laptop where you're trying to access your corporate account, if this stuff gets into the browser, it's going to go steal usernames and passwords, and then collect those into Stealer logs, which are massive files of stolen credentials that these attackers then go and sell out on the dark web and in different forums out there. And it's interesting too, this is an area where we actually see criminals using generative AI to produce scripts and emails and really start deploying thousands and hundreds of thousands of phishing emails out there of all different forms, trying to get people to click and get this, stealer malware installed on their systems. And there are a number of ways too that Cynet helps protect against this. Kind of from the bottom up, there's email and mobile security, where we're making sure that people aren't clicking on malicious links, aren't clicking, downloading attachments within their emails or applications. There's the endpoint security, that protects the workstations. And then finally, we have this interesting service called Lighthouse, where folks within Cynet are kind of monitoring these underground forums, where actually for when those stealer logs first arrive. So almost before they're actually offered up for sale, we see these stealer logs coming in and can identify if a company's been compromised. When we start to see the company URL within these stealer logs, we can quickly identify the accounts that have been compromised and get those accounts updated before the stealer logs can actually be leveraged to do some type of account takeover. So again, kind of a layered security approach where we're trying to really cover all the bases. So just to show you a couple of screens from the Cynet all-in-one platform, you can see here, this is kind of the main screen where you could see right in the dashboard, you see what's happening on endpoints, users, networks. We have a deception technology that works there as well. SaaS and cloud, security posture management. You could look on there and get more detail. Email security. There's an XDR capability if there are any other data sources that we're trying to grab information from to use to help identify threats. And then we have our automation that you could look at. I'll talk about each of these, but everything is available right there in one dashboard, a single pane of glass. You're not jumping to different systems and different vendors and different UIs. All of this stuff is there for you to access and kind of make managing the cybersecurity and understanding what's happening within the organization very easy. Here you see some examples, SaaS and cloud security posture management. You can connect your SaaS and cloud apps, look at the inventory of what's there. You can look at automatically determine if there are any risks in any of the configurations. You can also see if the configurations align with different industry standards or industry regulations. And what those requirements are. The system will automatically tell you that you're out of compliance with, name the regulation, and what you need to do to fix it, and actually give you a one-click fix where, click the button and we'll update it so that you now comply with whatever that standard is. It makes it very easy to use. The box on the right, you could see the list of integrations you have very easily, and getting these to be integrated is also very easy. And then on the bottom, you kind of see a map of your network. And once the Cynet agent is deployed, you could look on here and very easily see what the map of your network looks like. And you'll also see, if you want to launch, deception, you could see decoy nodes and decoy hosts, decoy users out there on the network as well. So it gives you a very simple look and lay of the land of what you have. And with that, I won't go through all these, but we have a lot of clients in a lot of different industries. So, very, very familiar with supporting and the needs of the market, especially small, medium-sized enterprises. As you can see on here, and I won't read through all these because that's boring. So I'll move to the next screen. You could look, if you're not familiar with Cynet, you could look at different, G2 does a lot of rankings of, cybersecurity providers, Gartner peer review. You could see reviews from actual users on what their thoughts are about operating Cynet. And then on the right is MITRE. And if some of you aren't familiar with MITRE, the MITRE organization is kind of a not-for-profit organization. And one of the things they do is evaluate cybersecurity technology. And they have a kind of it's now a famous evaluation they do on endpoint protection solutions. And in the last MITRE evaluation, I have a couple of slides on it coming up too. Cynet actually achieved kind of this perfect 100% detection capability and 100% analytical coverage, which detection means that every one of the 143 threats that they threw out there, Cynet was able to identify, and 100% analytic coverage means that not only did Cynet detect the threat, but it identified information about the threat. It didn't just say, hey, something strange is happening. It said something strange is happening and this is what it is, and there's different levels of analytic coverage. Sometimes it's very detailed, sometimes it's somewhat high level, but it gives a lot more context and insight about what the threat is. And Cynet was able to achieve 100% coverage in that. One of only 2 vendors to achieve that, and the other vendor was Palo Alto, who's a $80 billion company right now. So Cynet was able to achieve kind of similar results as you see it on this slide. And when I talk about these achievements, the other thing is, if you hear vendors out there talking about how they did in MITRE, a lot of times they'll tell you how they did with configuration changes. And what that means is MITRE does this test. They throw threats at all the different vendors and see how well the vendor does at protecting against those threats. Then after they're done with it, they say to the vendors, all right, now you can completely reconfigure your system and we'll allow you to take the test again. And it's helpful for a vendor in terms of developing their technology to see if they can configure the system differently or make changes to the system so they can detect the threat. But in real world, it's kind of unrealistic. If you get hit with a threat and you miss it, you don't have a chance to go back and do a configuration change and try to identify the threat. You miss the threat. The ransomware is there. It's too late. So, but what you'll see is a lot of the vendors providing their results with configuration changes. How many threats they were able to detect. And that's like saying, I took a test and I failed it, but then I studied the questions and took it again and I got 100. That's not real world. So if you do look at other vendors, make sure when you look at their results, you're looking at them without configuration changes. And this is kind of an eye chart, but just to kind of show how Cynet compared to some of the other vendors that are out there that you might be using or might be considering. And some of these are, very well-known vendors, like Microsoft. A lot of folks will deploy Microsoft Defender because it's either incredibly inexpensive or it's included, with an E3 or E5 license. But Microsoft Defender doesn't work very well. As you can see on here, it's not a very powerful tool. It's free, and free is nice, and it's better than not having anything. But the protections they offer are just not very strong, and that's why we have a whole cybersecurity business, because all the problems that Microsoft has created with their software, we need other people from the outside to go in and kind of help protect everybody. So you can look here at SentinelOne, Sophos, Symantec, some very well-known, even IBM Security, arguably top 5 security business in the world if you just take their security business, and they seem to operate pretty poorly in this MITRE evaluation. So I think with that, I'm going to hand this off, and we're going to talk a little bit around how Cynet can help you comply with some of the regulations that you're facing.
So I guess I'll take this over. So with one of the requirements that we have, and with most other compliance programs or standards, we require an incident response plan. And part of it allows you to offload it in the event you cannot handle it. You have to offload it to a third party. And what Cynet includes is a complete incident response. Once something is detected, they will do the cleanup. The rest of the legal side of things, notifications and everything, that you're on your own. You're going to have to document all that, the external parties. But this is, the biggest challenge is getting your business back up in the event of something happening, and this is where their incident response comes into play, and then you have time to do the balance of the work. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm a little slow here.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. So again, this is part of NIST. If you're looking at the next program that we have in Canada, the CPCSC, which is the equivalent of the CMMC in the States for the military, we'll be following the NIST 800-171 program, the framework for the certification of businesses. Next one. Endpoint. Yes, we're looking for anti-malware solutions. The standard doesn't specify what you're going to use, as long as you have something in place. But from what you've seen here, you could see that this is a more comprehensive approach to endpoint security. And it's also covered in the ISO and the NIST controls. Next. What are we doing there? Yes. So we require logging. And one of the biggest challenges with logging is, how do you manage all your endpoints? Like, how do you get all that information? Someone's going to have to deploy everything into it. And every device, you're going to have to push an agent. Somehow you have to extract all the security events from all your endpoints. Whereas with the Cynet, capability, it actually will record all your events, security events and file events, any type of, basically a very detailed, comprehensive. It's as detailed as you want to look at, because you have control of all the alerts that are generated by the system, whether they're application or security or whatever it is. You can specify which logs you want to act on, and it will store them, and then it gives you the opportunity to actually take all this data and put it into your own log system. It could be just syslog server that you have in place. If you need to have all the data archived, we do recommend that you do have a copy of your data and back it up. But for you to decide how long needed, that would be a corporate policy. But usually, a year should be long enough to keep. And this is also addressed in the ISO control. Where else? What do we have? So log, and so you could see it's very comprehensive. Logging is very important. So you could see that also test, which will be part of CMC and CPCSC. And then we can go back. I can pass this over to the next slide, or 2 slides over. Yeah. So logging again, NIST, many controls. And let's go one more. Last one, I think. Or second. Yes. Okay. Email filtering. So you saw that email is important. Protecting. Is that me? No. Okay. Someone. Yeah, there we go. So this will protect your email. It will also, if you're using 365 or Gmail, the business plans, you can connect, and it will work with the 365 or Gmail, and do some filtering for you and do all the reporting. And then another control that we're going to be seeing in 2024 version of CANSOC 104, the revision, we're looking at tightening up people's remote, because today most people are working from home, and we're looking at them protecting, having almost the same type of security that they have in an office at home, other than the firewalls that people aren't going to have at home. They rely on the router to do whatever it's going to do from their vendor. But what we're looking for is centralized management for employees, and this again will lower the risk at home. And another recommendation we're looking at is if you're working from home, get off the home network and work from your guest network where no one else is on, and you'll have now a fairly secure environment. And I think we can open up any questions to people. Let's see, we have some questions. Yes. Okay. So one of the big terms out there is what's the difference between MDR and XDR? It was answered in the Q&A. The XDR gives you the SOC team, which is different. This is all part of the package. When you subscribe to Cynet, you get, you can sleep at night and know that there's a team that is actually looking after you when you need it. Cynet is implemented through a sensor, workstations, or hardware appliance. The hardware appliance is an option if you want to have something that does local. Some organizations require, for security and privacy, their data cannot leave the premise. So there is an appliance available, but normally you can push the application to all the workstations, or you can get people to install it from a file. Okay, so Griffin. Some people were asked about how successful it was, like real attack scenarios, or not scenarios, but real attacks. There's some case studies on the website available, and it's in the Q&A, the link that Griffin shared with us. Again, broadcast. Okay, so that's the deployment. Yes, so XDR uses a mix. What is AI security? I'm not sure if this is the answer, but there's a new Cynet does use AI, or whatever you want to call it. It's actually machine learning, because AI is not there yet. But because it works with anomalies, which are 0 days exploits, things that just don't, something new has come up, it will detect. Well, nothing's perfect, so it will give you a very high level of defense against, any 0-day exploits. If it's something way off, something really new, something that no one's ever heard of, then it's going to be everyone's challenge to deal with it. But at least if it gets in, there's a good chance it will get caught if it tries to do anything inside the environment, because it's being looked at constantly. So the log management I answered. Yeah, so
if I can jump in and help here. Yeah, thank you all for the questions. My fingers were smoking trying to type so fast to answer all of them. Some interesting use cases. I know one was brought up about development of generative AI. I think in that situation, it's tough to give a silver bullet answer. And like I put in the chat there, might make sense to do a quick follow-up, assess your current security stack, and sort of see how we can either complement or displace some of those tools. For pricing, all that's going to roll through Cybersecurity Canada here. I think the only question I wasn't able to answer, Victor, and I might defer to you here just because I'm not an expert on the certifications and compliance, was how exactly the endpoint log management meets some of those requirements. And you may have touched on that in one of the slides, but it's the only question here that I wasn't able to directly speak to.
So we require, I did answer it. It was, we want for at least our program, at a minimum, we want all the endpoints. Anything that Cynet can be installed in can push logs to us or to push them out. So we're looking for those logs. We're also looking for a length of time for those logs. That would be up to corporate policy. Could be 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever. And we also want them backed up. So because if you're the owner of the organization, it's your data and you have to protect it. So we would expect you to create, say, a syslog server. There are many applications out there for free. You don't have to have any in-depth search capabilities, just something to store the logs, and Cynet will push them out to you through the standard syslog format down to you. Okay, Cynet support legacy software. Cynet actually, I hate to say this, but they actually support Windows XP. So it's a scary thing. It's a scary thought, but it does support everything after Windows XP. So I'm not sure if that answers what you meant by a SIM asked about legacy software. So yeah, it does support Windows XP. Do organizations still use on-prem? No. Actually, the on-prem, it can protect two ways. It's not going to protect the actual through the compliance stream. You would put the agent on the server itself, and it will look for anomalies, as well as the agent will look for any malicious links through the domain, the DNS filtering, as well as the attachment filtering. that's on the endpoints. And what else do we have here? Can we submit IO hashes? Yes, of course. Can we submit IOC hashes, etc. That doesn't detect if it doesn't detect by Cynet? So, Griffin, the last question: can we submit IOCs, indicators of compromise? Yeah. So that's part of the threat hunting that's built in. So yes, it will support it, and it will, as part of the process, it will analyze every single file on every single endpoint that Cynet is on, and if it is found, then you know what the next steps are. Any other questions do we have?
I realized I had myself on mute there, Victor, but you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, you were muted. Do we have anyone? No other questions? I guess we're all good. If we have a hand up, raised hands. Oh, it's gone. Okay, so what we can do is, if you're looking for more information about the product, we can set up a demo for you. Oh, we got another hand up. Sam, okay. So we can set up a demo for you. We can set up a demo environment. Just give us a couple of hours, and we can have a full tenant available to you. So you can do deployment and see what the capabilities are, and starts throwing some ransomware at it, at your systems, and see what happens. So that's we have that ability to help you with that. And if there's anything else, you can contact myself or Renee Foster. Her email is renee.foster, RENE.FOSTER at cybersecuritycanada.com, or you can reach me at victor@cybersecuritycanada.com, and we can help you with pricing. We can help you with whatever you need. We're here to help. We want to make sure that you stay safe. So I guess any last words, Griffin, George?
Nothing for me. I just appreciate everybody jumping on and having those questions ready. And hopefully we can do another session like this sometime in the future.
Yeah. So expect another webinar from us in the not too distant future, and we'll call it a day. And we'll give you back 5 minutes of your lunch. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.